So every blockbuster this year has flopped, pretty much. Most of them, except for a few. Let's talk about it. So other than Barbie and Oppenheimer, which let's face it, is kind of saved movie theaters this year, and that was expected. So I wasn't the biggest fan of Barbie, but I can see why people love it. And I'm not going to tell anybody not to see it or anything. Like it was definitely like a charming um you know movie made by several good working hardworking great artists and great people like Greta Gerwig. I love Greta Gerwig. So but Oppenheimer was my favorite movie that came out this year. um it was my most anticipated and ended up being my favorite, which is so rare. Like, when is that ever the case? Now obviously there's still another 4 months to go, and we got Oscar movies to come out, and we got so many other stuff like Killers of the Flower Moon. Like, I can't wait for that. But like stuff like that, and David Fincher's films, and I can't wait for those. But there is, you need to understand that Hollywood's in a bit of a crapper right now, right? The writer's strike, actor strike, that's going on, still going on. Video effects workers from Marvel are unionizing. They're sick of stuff going on right now. The Disney situation, and this isn't just Disney. This is specifically big blockbuster films that have come out this year. Fast X, um, The Flash, um, Blue Beetle, huge blockbusters that have come out, plus the Disney stuff like Little Mermaid, um, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, and uh, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, stuff like that, right? There's a reason why blockbusters aren't doing that well this year. It's simple. Because if you've seen the blockbusters that aren't doing this well, it's because they're sequels, they're remakes, or they're comic book movies. And those are three things that I think the audiences are telling these studios. We're sick of these. We're sick of how poorly written they are now, and we need more original stuff. That's basically what they're saying. And a big reason why they're flopping too is how high budgeted these films are. I mean, Little Mermaid made $550 million. It barely, I believe that's what it made, and it was in theaters a long time, and it barely broke even because when you consider marketing and you consider that goes into it, plus the budget, you know, I don't think Disney plans on making these 250, $300 million movies expecting to make $20 in profit or something like that. Like, they're not looking at that. We're hitting a situation like similar to the late 50s, early 1960, when Cleopatra was made, where that movie was so expensive, it kind of like, even though like it did make money, like it lost movie studios money with it even being released. And they had to go back to original storytelling, to creative ways of making movies. And yeah, obviously the budget, if you look back at then, it's nothing that what it is now. It's like honestly a low budget horror movie because of inflation. But Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny being $300 million. You look at the original Raiders of the Lost Ark, 20 million, which would be 60 million today, right? And we're not saying you got to make another Raiders of the Lost Ark, but what is Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny? It's a $300 million remake that takes no risks because of how much money Disney's investing in it. And it's also not well written. It's a sequel to a character that we've known for 50 years. And with the writer strike going on right now, as we speak, you know, I think two things have been discussed, right? There's a lot of people saying, well, movies stink today, right? That's why, like, why pay the writers? The movies aren't that good. Yes and no. There are a lot of blockbuster movies specifically, and I think that's what casual moviegoers are talking about that aren't that great, right? The big blockbusters, right? Which is basically the main reason why some people go to the theater nowadays with streaming services, waiting for things to just hit streaming and then they can watch it at home. Here's the thing. Because of that, you're not getting the typical 90s mid budget classics that used to rake at the box office in the 90s with no physical media. I'm still a supporter of physical media. I still buy Blu-rays all the time. Because of that, and the money that's not made there as well, especially that's another reason why movies aren't making as much. So they just put these huge blockbusters out and they market the crap out of those, and the smaller ones kind of get dripped to the side. And usually the smaller budget ones that you see are horror movies that rake with teenagers who love to go see it, and specifically PG-13 horror movies and stuff like that. So it's really like comic book movies have also kind of gotten rid of comedies because a lot of them have become comedies, which was cool to have, right? While it was happening, but now they've kind of stepped over the line. Now that you just don't see casual comedies, and the casual comedies that you do see typically aren't that good. Um, so because another reason is a lot of people are afraid to offend people. That's another thing too with social media, specifically Twitter. A lot of people are terrified to offend people. Therefore, you don't get a lot of the really raunchy, entertaining comedies that you got in the 2000s and the 90s and all that stuff because people are afraid to offend people. We go through these moments, highs and lows throughout history. You know, some people you weren't allowed to offend some people back in the day, and cursing was seen in movies as bad and then became more normal. I mean, people are still cursing in movies. You don't see any nudity on camera as well, right? Because you know it's people believe it's disrespectful to women. So a lot of like early 2010s, like I was just watching the other day, Love and Other Drugs with Anne Hathaway and Jake Gyllenhaal. You don't see movies like that anymore, right? What's it's good or bad or whatever, I don't really care, but it's rare that you see it. In fact, some people were kind of a little bit shocked that there was nudity in Oppenheimer. It wasn't even like this crazy nudity, it was just casual nudity and stuff like that. There was slight nudity in Beau is Afraid. Another one, but again, really minute and stuff. I mean, I'm not saying you need nudity in movies for them to be good. I'm just saying there you it really just means people don't want to offend movie studios don't want to offend other people. So when people say are talking about the writers, they're right in ways that there are a ton of writers out there that are not great. And you know why they're not great? Because they're preaching. They're preaching to the audience things that audiences, instead of having the audience make up their mind, you know, Martin Scorsese has a quote about this. The worst thing you can do as a writer, and I'm paraphrasing, is preaching to them, telling them what they should think. It's just going to piss them off. It's just going to be like, okay, so I guess you're smarter than me, or I'm not allowed to think this differently. Like it's stuff like that. Movies used to be so more open minded, and having the actual viewer think for themselves was a good thing. And today you're not really getting that. You're getting what you should think. It's kind of what I didn't like about Barbie, right? It's stuff that I didn't like about in certain stuff too. Like I didn't even watch She-Hulk, but that was another one. Like She-Hulk was like really frustrating for Marvel viewers, but then there were people who liked it, and then there were people who were saying you don't like it if you're sexist if you don't like it or something like that. Like that's just like simple-minded criticism. But people don't want to offend people, and also the writer's strike, movies aren't doing well, and it's because people aren't going to the theater to see them. A, because of the huge budgets and lack of risks, which is also the studios who are doing that. But it's also the writers preaching to the audiences, and audiences hate that. And audiences are seeing the poorly written blockbusters that are being released, and they're deciding not to go. And or they're spreading bad buzz about the movie, and then casual people aren't going. I didn't hate The Flash. But when I look at The Flash, a lot of people didn't like it because they're mostly sick of comic book movies. We're sick of comic book movies. It's basically what I got from The Flash because The Flash is nearly not, it's honestly, I think it's actually probably one of the better DCU films that has come out in the DCU. That's not saying much because there's so many bad ones, but that's what I thought about The Flash. I was like, why are people reacting this way for The Flash? Why is Blue Beetle not making any money? Oh, it's because people are just sick of comic book movies. Why are people sick of comic book movies? Well, it's because Disney hasn't had a plan for the MCU basically after Avengers Endgame or Spider-Man Far From Home. And I love comic book movies. You know, it's a huge reason why I got into film in the first place was comic movies. One of my favorite movies of all time is Spider-Man, the original Raimi Spider-Man films. It sucks that they've kind of just been churned by the studio into this crap. See, like sometimes studios just look at it for the wrong reasons. Because studios like look at the Barbie movie and the success of Barbie, right? Now, hypothetically, what was the reason why people made Barbie successful? Well, it was a movie for women, right? Well, they see it as a movie for toys and they're making a Hot Wheels movie. So how many, I bet the Hot Wheels movie is going to do really well, and then they're going to make another one and it's going to be for another toy, and then people are eventually going to realize. John Wick 4 I thought was a really good ending for the character, but now there's talks about John Wick 5 because John Wick 4 made so much money, so they want to churn everything out of there. Indiana Jones should have ended probably with The Last Crusade, if we're being honest. If Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, directed by Steven Spielberg, couldn't be good, most likely the fifth one with an 80-year-old Indiana Jones, it wasn't going to be that great. And I had expectations, stupidly, because James Mangold was doing it. I love James Mangold. It didn't work out. It was a horrible. It's my least favorite of the franchise. So, but you look at the writers and they're preaching, right? Like I said before, but studios are hiring those writers. Now, a lot of those writers are getting those jobs because studios are hiring those people because they believe the public is wants those writers. You look at like TV shows like Velma, which was a complete disaster, and you know them trying to go into social politics, going into social politics for a television show about Scooby Doo, which was one of my favorite cartoons ever. But let's face it, Scooby Doo is a kid show that's very like innocent, fun. Every once in a while, from time to time, like I'll watch an episode. Like it just makes me feel good. And they decided like, okay, we're gonna take that and we're gonna make this raunchy comedy with political stuff, and just not everything has to be so political. People go to the movies to get away from that stuff. And when it's in their movies and they're sensing poorly written stuff, and the female characters, for example, has been talked through like crazy. The fact of, Ray, like calling her a Mary Sue and stuff like that. I liked Ray for a while, and then but I understand the criticisms. Just Captain Marvel, flawless female characters. The most interesting characters of all time, a lot of them are girls. Some of my favorite characters ever. I loved Spider-Gwen in the comic in Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. I loved Neve Campbell as Sidney Prescott. Like I loved Ridley from Alien. Like, like this is Sarah Connor, Terminator. Like we've always had these characters. And if you want to make more of them, that's fine. It's great, actually. It's what we want. But when you're making like this preaching point where you're really trying to put the nail in the coffin there and really make your point, it gets on people's nerves. I'm optimistic that we are hitting a change in the movie industry, and it's needed. Because movies are going to be out there. Everybody wants entertainment. I don't know how long the theater will be out there, but I don't know how long the physical media out there, but people want to be entertained. A lot of the mid-budget stuff that we were getting in the 90s and stuff was going to televisions, where you're getting Succession, The Sopranos started that, right? Breaking Bad continued it. Like just stuff like that. right? A lot of this mid-budget stuff with these really interesting, complex stories is going to television. Is why I say a lot of people are watching TV shows. Take a look at something like Pirates of the Caribbean, where you see Jack Sparrow acting like a sleazy pirate. Like, does that come out today? I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure. They maybe not want that in their movie to show that, I don't know. I mean, they have maybe they would. I mean, they have random people on Venice Beach smacking Barbie in the ass and millions in front of thousands of people. So I guess maybe. But in regards to that, you're not going to see like risk taking in movies today. And I think that's got to change because ultimately we didn't get to this point in humanity without taking risks. It's not how we, yes, you can take a step back, but it progresses you forward. And ultimately, you just stay in the same spot if you take zero risk. And you ended up losing that money, right? Indiana Jones was the safest movie I've ever seen in my life. It's down. These comic book movies aren't doing anything out of the ordinary, down. Like Blue Beetle, which I haven't seen yet, and actually I've heard is pretty good, is not doing well. Why? Because I just judging by the trailer, it looks like a movie that I saw 20 million times through Marvel. That's just what it looks like. It's going to have the comedy, it's going to have the innocent kid, teenager growing up. And yeah, he's going to face a bad guy that's probably not that compelling of a villain. He's going to win. And then it's going to set up on some other sequels and stuff like that. That's what it's going to be. We've seen this a million times now with the comic book movies in the last 12 years. And you know what? People are sick of it. They're sick of the sequels. They're sick of the remakes. They're sick of the nostalgia bait. And they want original stuff. And this has happened. I mean, they did this happen with horror, right? This is why, like Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, so many successful slashers. And then they just almost ruin the genre by just rebooting sequels and sequels and sequels and sequels. And Scream kind of rejuvenated it, and now you're getting elevated horror today. Like, you know, we're hitting this point, but it inspires change. So I'm optimistic about the future, but stuff is going to have to happen soon because of the pandemic. People had a lot of time to watch television, watch shows, watch movies, and they're not happy with the products that are coming out, specifically with Disney.